Everyone, welcome back to AsArt with Nick and John. We're talking about The Irishman, and let's go ahead and kind of jump on in. So, Nick, I'm a big kind of classic cinema fan. I really love like Francis Ford Coppola films, Martin Scorsese films, and of course, in this case, we're getting a Martin Scorsese film with the entire kind of legacy cast you would think of in those type of movies. I didn't think you were a fan of those type of movies. So before I give my thoughts, I want to just get your general thoughts. And then after that, you guys were going to talk about the visual effects in the film, which were really significant, even though they're supposed to go mostly unnoticed. So Nick, what do you think about the story overall?
I enjoyed it. Like, it wasn't like his greatest film, like Casino or the Departed was a more kind of recent one that was like the kind of same kind of mobster kind of thing, but like it was, or got, you know what I mean, like it was really cool to go back though and experience one of these films, to see these iconic actors just kind of act, and it was just so cool. I went in not kind of expecting anything. Like, I was like, Jimmy Hoffa, whoa, this is like connected to history, and like I'm like, this is so cool. I really got into it because I like history and stuff, so I was like, whoa, look at this, and I was really enjoying it. But if I had to pick one scene, it would be probably the fish in the car scene near the end of the movie. That was like my favorite scene. I was just busting up. I don't know if it was because I was already delirious because I started the movie so late at night and I didn't realize it was like 3.5 hours. I'm just like, it's like 3 a.m. I'm like, the fish. I'm like,
funny.
I'm like losing it. But I loved it. I remembered everything, and I also loved the ending. I don't know what it was, but I really resonated with me. Like, him being really old, and like the whole idea of like, he's like, hey, there's no one even around, you can name some names and stuff. And I know it's based off of a book, right?
It's called Painting Walls, I think.
Yes, Painting Walls. Yeah, so it's based off of a book, so it means it could be half and half actual because it's been translated to a film and all that stuff. But it was so good. I really enjoyed it. The de-aging kind of took me out of it a little bit at some points, because like I liked it. Like, I like the de-aging better than we see in like the Disney Marvel films. So like Disney Marvel, when they do de-aging, they want to make them.
So you guys,
like,
just so you have a little bit of context, if you haven't seen the movie, and obviously you're gonna get spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, but we have Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and all these guys that go through this movie, and you see them as young men, as really old men, and then in their current states, which are, you know, pretty old as well. And they do that through makeup, but they also do a lot of computer aided effects to make them look younger. And we're going to talk about the actual process about that in a little bit, but some people have found that to be distracting. So Nick, you're talking about that process here, right? About how it affected you, right?
So like in the Disney films, they make them look like the young actors. And what was really cool about the aging process they used in The Irishman was they kind of just like de-age Robert De Niro without making him like look like young Robert De Niro in the films. Like, because it was cool because it kind of just, he was playing that character. It wasn't like young Robert De Niro. It's like young, the character he's playing. And the only thing that took me out of it, like, I loved the way it looked visually with like his face and stuff, but like there's this one scene where, there's multiple scenes where you could just tell it's an old man trying to play a young man. Like, even when he's trying to act tough and be physical. That's one scene with the grocery store. And it's just like,
yes,
he's
the exact same scene, I think, both of us.
And like, you know, the way he's moving his leg, you can just tell it was an old dude. But that happened with multiple shots. Like, even when they move and get up, you can just tell that they're older, which is,
they're older gentlemen. Yeah.
And it's not, and it's not anything that like took me out of the story or anything. I just like, it caught my attention. I was like,
yeah, so the only scene, I think we're talking about the exact same scene, and I've read some reviews of people talking about this exact same one, is there's a scene where the camera kind of pulls out. I can't remember if it's a wide shot to begin with, but he's kicking this guy on the curb and just beating him up. I think it's just
like one steady shot. I don't think he even zooms in or anything. I think he walks in.
So it's just a wide shot. Yeah.
I think he just bashes him through the door, and like the glass shatters.
Yeah. So he's kicking and beating him up like right by the gutter, but at the same time you can tell and he's supposed to be younger in this period of the film, and he's moving like an 80-year-old man or however old Robert De Niro is. Why for that particular shot they didn't just use another actor? I don't know, but that's one of the few things that took me out. I've read some people with the de-aging, it threw them off throughout the entire movie. They didn't feel like it looked good. It didn't bother me. Like, I thought it was well done. They used technology, and we'll talk about the technology a little bit later on in the podcast, to where they redefined how to do digital de-aging. And that's one of the budget was very high because of that. They had to do so much of it. And we'll talk about that more, but it didn't bother me. Like I thought I liked it. And some people were saying, well, why don't you just get younger actors like you would for those flashback scenes? Well, but they're not going to have the same mannerisms as the real actors are. This is kind of in a way for not Martin Scorsese as a director, but for the actors like Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, all of them. This might be the last time that we get to see them all in the same movie
it's so
together.
awesome.
And those guys are like the gold standard of a golden, cinema generation where once they're gone, it's going to be a sad day, So it was great to get to see them. While it's maybe not, like you're saying, Martin Scorsese's best film, it was a great film.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great way to see a true kind of cinema type of person, purist, bringing that type of stuff to a streaming platform, which I think is really, really important.
I felt it could have been 3 episodes, but obviously it was really cool to see it as just one long movie. But like it could have easily have been 3 episodes that could have just connected as one longer story. I think they did that for that Western film they did.
Western film,
The Hateful Eight or whatever. They did like a Western like Samurai 7 movie on Netflix. And I think it was only 4 episodes, but basically it was just a 4-hour movie, and they spliced it into episodes.
So I wasn't Hateful Eight because Hateful Eight was Quentin Tarantino, but
it was one of the Cowboy like 8 or 7 or whatever, or the
Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, that one. Yes, the one that was on.
I'm not sure.
It was something like that, like kind of series. I think Chris Pratt was.
But they split it up into episodes. Yeah. So do you think they decided to do it one long movie because Martin Scorsese is a cinema purist and he wanted one long movie, or do you think that was always the plan from the beginning? I'm not sure.
I don't know, because I feel like Netflix would have pushed episode viewing because it probably would have looked good that they completed the season compared to like movie percent. You know what I mean? Because think about like for them, if they're like, oh, look at this, we had a mini series, and all 4 episodes got watched all the way to the end. You know what I mean? Like it would have looked better on their part.
When they're not doing multiple seasons, do you think they're still as eager to do multiple episodes? Do you think that's only when they want to do installments over seasons?
I don't know. I feel like Netflix is very flexible to work with the creator. And I think that's
true. I think that's very true.
What's cool about Netflix, like, even though some shows are like, oh man, I can't believe they produced that show. But
they're willing to take chances.
They're willing to like, oh, you want to do a Castlevania animated series? Sure, let's do 5 episodes, like random numbers, like 4.5.
Yeah,
it's just like, whoa, 9 3/4.
No, that's true.
Harry Potter special.
That's one of the great things about Netflix, which I hope they don't lose too much of their audience with all the competition coming out, because it really does seem like they're the ones that are taking chances. And really, I mean, they're the original one who took big chances on streaming. When they started announcing streaming for movies, because I was a Netflix through the mail. I'm still one of the few Netflix through the mail subscribers, which is ridiculous to think, but I love that. But when I heard they were streaming, I'm like, well, that's never going to be the replacement because the quality is never going to be as good. You don't get surround sound, but all those things have kind of come around, and now you do get 5.1 surround. You do get 4K video. Is it the same quality as you'd get on a 4K Blu-ray? No, but it's good enough to where I would be perfectly happy with that as well.
You can watch it instantly. You don't have to. You don't have to put it in a
big
queue,
difference.
Mail it, wait. Even if it's a 2-hour like Amazon rate for shipping or whatever, like you could just do it,
and you don't have to pay $30 for the disc either. So it's a big benefit. So I mean, Netflix was the pioneers in this area, and so I'm glad to see that they've reaped the benefits.
Well,
but
what's that other show?
We've entered a whole new era.
Sex, or not sex? It's like violence, love, robots.
Love, death, robots. I think it is.
So like that was like,
and that's a very
25
avant-garde type thing. Yeah,
5 minutes to 30 minutes depending on the short you're watching. You know what
mixed,
I mean?
Mixed medium. Yeah.
It was fantastic, and it's just so
very,
cool.
very different.
Netflix is doing stuff like that. So like, if you like stuff like that, please support Netflix, because like, if you want more content that's different, out of the box, or chancing more, like money is what really pushes certain things. Your dollar will keep new shows coming out like that and stuff. And it's like, it's becoming to that point. Like, do you want to support Hulu, which is more old media, a lot of old TV shows and stuff, cable? Like, if you enjoy that, support that with your dollar. But if you support like the smaller creator and like different ideas and stuff, like you go with Netflix. It's so cool. We can kind of, at this point, it might get back to cable. I don't know. But at this point, it's like, it's kind of like, you can you can vote with your not vote with your dollar, but you know what I mean. Like you can kind of like
Yeah,
support
you
what
can
you want to support and
help try and perpetuate the material that you like.
yeah, and I think it's so
Yeah,
cool that we're in a time like that. Even stuff
yeah,
with YouTube like Patreon and other stuff. It's so cool
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
can like if you like something, if you really like the idea of a Yoda Chewbacca character and like or whatever, you can keep throwing money at it because you like it. You know what I mean? You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, and you can get ultra customized content
Yeah.
on YouTube because it's individual creators. But to an extent, we're supporting the creators' platforms on how flexible they are. Disney's going to do Disney stuff because they can only have certain stuff on their Disney Plus content, whereas Netflix, HBO, they have different things. So that's a really cool thing about it. So I did want to ask this question because I feel like this is a valid question. So Martin Scorsese made a statement that he felt all the Marvel films and all the superhero films aren't true cinema. And Francis Ford Coppola, and again, these are two of the biggest directors ever, in our lifetimes, and their movies will sustain far after we're gone. What do you think about that? And everybody has an opinion, but now that we've seen The Irishman, which is not a movie in cinema movies, but streaming, do you feel like there is a strong case to that? Because I have my thoughts on it, but I want to kind of hear your thoughts on it too.
Film is film, right? Like the first films were people playing at the beach in France, right? Like the first movie picture cameras, and it's like, I think film is just like to tell whatever story you want to tell. If it's a superhero story, if it's like a Memento where it's just like you're telling the story backwards, doing something creative with it, to even YouTube, even this is not a movie, but it is video content that you watch and consume. And you know what I mean? So it's like, it's so hard to say nowadays because like content is being consumed in so many different ways. Like even movies nowadays, like this purist who was like a movie purist, which should be like film and stuff, it decided to do. I mean, I think they did do a small run in theaters for The Irishman.
Yes,
but
that was just so it could be available for Academy Awards. It has to premiere in theaters to be available for Academy Awards.
Which is stupid. They got to change that soon. Like, come on. Like the old system's crumbling fast. It's like you have to get with the times. Like, the way that people have access to stuff now is so different, and like be able to watch something in your home compared to a theater. And I get the ongoing theater experience, but like if it wasn't for films and stuff, we would still be going to the stage to watch stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like, so like, are they not purists because it's not that stage production? You know what I mean? Like, like how do you judge entertainment of storytelling at that point? And I think him going off at Marvel was either he's jealous his films don't make as much, or dude, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. Or no, it's just his opinion, and everyone has an opinion, and that's fine. Like if he really clings to the old way and he wants to cling to it, let him do that. It's not gonna change my views on his movies. I'm still gonna appreciate his films and love his movies and love the moments of his films and stuff like that. And I still love certain moments from my Avenger films too. So
yeah. So the reason I asked that, and this story has been beaten into the ground, so my goal here wasn't to bring that back or perpetuate it, but when you watch a Francis Ford Coppola film or you watch a Martin Scorsese film, you're watching a much different film than you are like an Avengers or superhero film. And, I read an article, not about this particular topic, but the first movie to really push this of superheroes and just kind of box office fun popcorn was kind of Star Wars, which is ironic because George Lucas was in the same circle as Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, and Martin Scorsese. In fact, at a short point in time, Francis Ford Coppola had his own production company, and that's when George Lucas made THX 1138, which was a college film of his that they made into a feature film. And it was so far out there that no movie studios wanted to actually make it or fund it and things like that. Wow. That's kind of the story behind it. But so when I think about my all-time favorite movies, a lot of them are Francis Ford Coppola films. We have Godfather 1 and 2, we have Apocalypse Now, and then I love Martin Scorsese films. So I love those movies, and they are cinema, what you consider high cinema films. And so there is a distinction for me. Like when I look at Marvel movies and Star Wars movies, to me, they are in a different category for me, even though they're both movies and obviously the genre is different. I don't want to say that Star Wars isn't high art or the Avengers movies aren't high art. They're more there. It's weird to try and word it. They're there to get people to just have fun and watch a movie,
It's
eat
kind of
popcorn,
like
go to the theaters.
eye candy. It's kind of like you go there for
Yeah,
a fun
it's fun.
experience. It's more
yes.
of an experience of just like seeing explosions and effects. A fancy,
but you get some good story elements in there as well.
I mean,
you get some wonderful story elements in there. Whereas I feel like when you have, like, let's just go back to the Irishman. When you have guys, just you pointed out that in the Irishman they're almost always sitting. They're sitting in a car. Yeah. They're sitting in a bar. They're just sitting. When you have these points where people are just sitting, and in another episode you're talking about how in the Mandalorian, the final episode, your favorite part was when these two stormtroopers were just sitting on their speeder bikes talking. Yeah. When you have just these well scripted dialogues that these guys have, and you get to know the characters and their thoughts, and you get into more philosophical conversations and just deeper conversation, which you get a lot of in a Martin Scorsese film,
and
or
also
Francis Ford Coppola.
Game of Thrones.
Yes, there's a lot of that in there as well.
Dialogue, talking. Like I didn't love the show like because of like whatever violence or effects, or whatever it was. Yeah. I loved it because of the character developments, like
characters,
like they're riding on horses, and in the first season he's talking to Jon Snow on his way to the wall. He's like, why do you want to go to the wall? You know what I mean? Then they're at the wall, and you know what I mean, like the knights. There's just
that's a great example.
Character development, and it's just so, and that's just season 1. And I think the show started to fall apart was when they got rid of character development and tried to go with the big explosions and war stuff. Yeah. And it was just like, because obviously they were coming to the any story coming to the end, though. It's like you're coming to the end of a story anyway. I mean, it's hard to close out a story, but you lost those moments of just sitting and talking, to really develop that stuff. But anyways, back to the Irishman.
Yeah. Whereas the Irishman, that's kind of what that story is all about. I mean, obviously they're trying to touch on semi-true stories. And by the way, the guy that wrote the book that it was based on, all the real mobsters have kind of come out and said, this guy wasn't even really a mobster. Like he's telling so we don't know if the book that it was based on was actually even true to begin with.
Okay.
But as far as from a cinema standpoint, I do kind of place these guys in very high regard. But at the same time, it depends on what you're looking for. You don't always want deep conversations, but you don't always want just, kind of fun, silly stuff too. You need all of it.
You can't always watch deep conversation films. You can't.
No. Like my favorite films are movies I don't watch all the time.
Yeah. And then if I just want something on in the background, it's like The Office, Parks and Rec, Arrested Development. Yeah. Like funny shows that I can just hear, I can laugh, I can hear the famous quotes from Arrested Development when he goes, "I blew myself." He has like blue paint all over him.
What are you talking about? You don't fall asleep to Apocalypse Now and The Godfather in the background? Come on, man. What type of moviegoer are you?
I do not. I prefer happy.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But so anyway, so Irishman, I absolutely love. So let's talk about the technology a little bit, and because I feel like this was really big. So the de-aging in this film, I read a little bit about it, and I actually have seen on Facebook and social media some people that I know passively that worked on it actually as well. And so the technique, and I'm just kind of in a nutshell here. I don't know it very intimately, but so basically it was shot digitally. They had a very nice camera as their main hero camera, and on each side they had two Arri Alexa cameras that were set up to shoot infrared film, or at least shoot in infrared. And so basically at all times they were capturing stereo infrared imagery of the characters. The reason they shot in infrared is because the shadows and the lighting would ruin the reconstruction they were going to try and do. So photogrammetry is when you're taking images from different angles and you try and create a 3D model from that. And if you're taking, like, say, your phone or your camera, you're taking pictures from all kinds of different angles, you can use programs like Metashade, reality capture. You can recreate a model of that true to life with texture and everything. But if the lighting is inconsistent or it's reflective, that can throw it off. Whereas with infrared, it's just picking up the surface, right? So you have the hero camera capturing the color image, these infrared cameras that don't project any visible light, but the cameras can see that. So they use that to reconstruct the faces, but then they also had the main actors doing all kinds of different facial expressions in these huge light probes that have like hundreds and hundreds of cameras and all kinds of lights that flash in different angles and different timings, where they basically create a really, really accurate digital double. And so they used the video footage from the infrared cameras, they used the digital double, and they also took all kinds of decades worth of footage from Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, all those guys.
So
they basically reconstructed
like a very advanced deep fake.
Yeah, basically, yes. They tried to keep the acting. I mean, they were really sitting there as their older selves, but then they would use the information from on set, and then they would use that to help match it with the digital double they have, and then they would have, like you said, almost like deep fake from existing material from the past. They would combine that all together to try and de-age these guys or make them look older. And I thought that was just the coolest process because it's
awesome.
the best of all worlds. You're using digital, but you're using real footage from the past and you're capturing the real performance to try and get it as absolutely accurate as possible. And
That's so
did it bother some people? Yeah, but overall, that is an amazing thing. The downside is, I guess that camera rig they called it the three-headed monster because it was just gigantic. They had this huge camera and these smaller cameras because Arri Alexas, when you have them built out, aren't small cameras. And those were just the side cameras, so, but very, very fascinating stuff.
There wasn't a lot of moving shots though in that movie.
I mean, I don't think Martin Scorsese has a lot of moving shots in his movies in general. It's usually, just subtle pans or stationary.
Which is nice,
I mean, he does have movement.
It's so nice to see like classic cinematography
yes,
again.
Cinematography.
Like,
it's a lot more intimate. Yes.
Yeah, and like even holding longer on a cut too. I feel like nowadays cuts happen so fast during dialogues and scenes and stuff like crazy. It was nice to
let the scenes play out. Yeah.
Like Wes Anderson, I think does it too, where they just just let it hold for a beat. You know what I mean? Like let's just take in this moment, like let everything happen in this one frame, and then we can cut to a different frame. But it's just like let's let time for this scene to develop, kind of thing. Give actors a space.
That's partially because it is Martin Scorsese. He's one of the classic directors, and that's how he knows to do things, so I'm glad that, and again, maybe one of the biggest things for me for this is that we got a director that's more on the cinema side. I'm sure probably he's one of the guys who fought going away from film to digital, he's a cinema guy, but it's cool to see him on a platform like Netflix to where we get basically a classic cinema movie on a streaming platform. That could be a huge gap or a bridge of a gap that you might have had for a while longer otherwise. So,
and then I really just enjoyed the framing too.
Yes,
everything was just so good. It's so funny because we're watching this during the holidays, and my wife's family likes to watch Hallmark movies and stuff like that. And they had one on.
Not a Hallmark movie.
I was just like, oh my goodness, like framing, consistency. I'm just like, this is so bad. Like someone just grabbed a DSLR and like the audio, I felt like they just put a zoom in the middle of an empty room and that was their audio. It was like echoey and all this stuff. It was like, this is so bad. It was so nice. Like from that to The Irishman, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you, cinema. Like I was just like, it felt so good to watch like a cinema. You know what I mean? Like framing, everything was just so spot on. And
but of course, that goes back to budget and expertise as well too. I mean, the budget on this was supposed to be very, very high, especially with the de-aging. But
I mean, when you have an eye for something, and we have a story, you know the direction kind of thing. Not like what kind of holiday movie are we doing this year? You know what I mean? Like for the Hallmark. Obviously, that's the low of the lows. When I picked it up, it was just so crazy because I literally watched that during the day, and at night I watched The Irishman. I'm like, thank goodness Netflix. Like, thank you. You're saving my mental.
But who watched more during the holiday season? More Hallmark movies or more The Irishman? It depends on what the audience wants, right? Exactly. It's just like when we were talking about Star Wars and other things too. It's just whatever the audience wants. Yeah. So, but I'm glad we got this movie. I really, really loved it. 100%. Even though older viewers like my dad who loves Godfather, even he thought it was slow at certain spots, but I didn't mind it at all.
You know, the slowness I did feel, but it didn't bug me. Like it bugged me in The Mandalorian when there was like dead space like for those episodes, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this isn't progressing the story. I felt like the slower space in The Irishman was adding to the character. It didn't feel like it was taken away from the film. It wasn't, you know what I mean?
It's always just forwarding the narrative.
It was just like, it was, I was perfectly fine with it. I was like, this is cool. This is great. But to show like bad pacing would be like The Mandalorian, which is like, what's the point of this episode? You know what I mean?
In certain spots.
I mean, I'm talking about 2 episodes. I'm talking about like episode 5 and 6. But that's the only thing that really bugged me about The Mandalorian.
Nick and I like a lot of different movies. Obviously, I like a lot of classic films. Nick's kind of all over. He has appreciation for a lot of them.
Thanks, John.
Some people might look at The Irishman and say this is too long, this is too serious. Go and really try and give it a go. It's an amazing movie, and again, you're kind of supporting strong filmmaking, independent filmmaking, based on, you know, the chances that Netflix are taking. You're getting everything from Stranger Things to The Irishman on Netflix. So
And The
give it
Witcher.
a view. Really, really good stuff. Yeah, and The Witcher. So you're getting everything. So give it a view. Hopefully, if you haven't watched it or you're thinking about watching it, or if you did watch it, we had some type of information for you that you enjoyed. If you want more information on what we're doing, go ahead and over to asart.space. You can get our audio podcast on Spotify and iTunes, and also links to videos on various platforms as well. So we'll see you on the next As Art.